Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live streaming event of the Angry Astronaut. This may be a bit of a shock for you, especially for those of you who had your volume turned up, expecting me to not have much of an audio, but here we are. I hope you like it. So, in any event, let me make a couple of adjustments here. I did this at the last second, and then we can get started. Can you guys hear me? Please post in Discord as long as you can hear me. All right. Everyone seems to be doing well. Excellent. Super audio. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, fantastic. Well, I'm glad that things have improved, and I have a video coming out today that's going to be one of my traditional attacks on Boeing, a little safer than my last subject. So that'll be coming up soon. So in any event, very glad to see all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. The folks who wish to participate and chat, by all means do so. Excuse me, I'm zapping the speakers on my PC. So many adjustments that one has to make. Hello, Cyclonics. How are you? Okay. So in any event, a quick mention. I have a couple of minor little ads popping up here. Didn't really have much of a choice, unfortunately, trying to stay liquid, basically. I hope you guys will bear with me. I did not put in any of those skippable video ads or anything like that. I left that out. But a lot of folks monetize streaming videos. It's a pretty common thing. So in any event, maybe next week I won't do that, but my views have been down. So I didn't really have much of a choice in this particular case. So I'm going to move on from there. Our supporters voted on the topic, and we're going to be talking about asteroid deflection, something that isn't brought up a great deal, and something that needs to be discussed a great deal, in my opinion. But I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to say that there hasn't been an extinction level event on this planet for millions of years brought about by an asteroid. And even though we've had things like the Tunguska event and also that particular airburst explosion in Russia that caused a number of injuries, that sort of thing, it doesn't even begin to compare to the number of people who are currently dying of the event. So that being the case, what can we expect? They just made a note that the clock is ticking down. I have no idea. I see the clock ticking up from my side, so I apologize from that. We are at 3 minutes and 42 seconds. I have no idea why that's going on, some sort of technical issue. But in any event. So, oh, the clock is ticking down, not up on humanity. I'm sorry, another space nut. Foolish me. I didn't even understand. And you're right. Sooner or later, and this will happen, sooner or later, an extinction level event, asteroid will collide with this planet. As a matter of fact, the Oumuamua asteroid, the interstellar visitor that we had, that I continue to believe actually was a light sail from extraterrestrial sources. I tend to be sort of extreme in my viewpoints on that, but there are some pretty prominent scientists who agree with me on that. But in any event, Yeah, it's inevitable. Someday that's going to happen, and if Oumuamua had been on a collision course with this planet, we would not have known about it until it was too late. And that was a big asteroid. It may not have been an extinction level event asteroid, if it was an asteroid, that is. But it would have, if it had crashed into this planet, the damages would have been quite substantial. The Space Boy points out the July 24th asteroid isn't a threat, but it's big and it's going to get close. Yeah. I mean, we're tracking these things better and better every day, but our methods of dealing with them seem to be limited. But still, somebody in Congress or somebody in any governmental institution is going to say, we've got all these problems. We have over 100,000 dead from the event, as we're forced to call it on YouTube. We need to focus our efforts on things like this, not the remote possibility that an asteroid's going to crash into us someday. Could we maybe think of a way that we could make this a profitable investment for the human species, not just protection, but also profit? I'm kind of leading you guys down a path here, but nevertheless, any suggestions there? If they asked if Hale-Bopp was going to hit the Earth, would you still want your name on it? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want my name on something that was going to kill my children. Definitely not. That's my opinion anyway. Scott Manley tried to deorbit a moon on Kerbal. That sounds like Scott Manley to me. That sounds like something he would do. Definitely. We have another contributor. Congress people can't seem to look to the future, only to the present, says Space Boy. And you're absolutely right. We don't look to the future at all on much of anything. Asteroids probably being the most extreme example of that. Also, extreme solar flares that could cripple our infrastructure. We don't look at that. There are many threats, clear and present dangers to our civilization that we still haven't done a great deal to try to stop. So I'm still kind of talking about how do we make this profitable? How do we make this attractive to a private company? Yes. Another space nut hit the nail on the head. Sending mining ships and either mine them out of existence or take advantage of the minerals in them and then put them on a course that isn't on a collision course with Earth. And also just start an asteroid mining program in general. Start taking advantage of asteroids that aren't going to collide with us so that we have an infrastructure in place in order to do something about asteroids in the long run. Building a structure inside of the asteroid is a hotel for tourists. Yeah, absolutely. That would be profitable as well. And once again, we don't have to focus on asteroids that are about to collide with us. We can focus on asteroids that aren't, as long as we have an infrastructure in place to do something about asteroids. That's going to make a really, really big difference. Colonel Lemon suggests that we give exclusive mining rights to any corporation who is able to prevent an asteroid from colliding with Earth or otherwise endangering its infrastructure. Yep, that would be a hell of an incentive. Exclusive mining rights, exclusive anything is a big positive to just about any corporation. So yeah, I think that would be a big opportunity. So, in any event, see the end of the world from our front room seats in the hotel. Yes, indeed. If there's nothing we can do about the asteroid, may as well have a front row seat as it comes plunging into the atmosphere. Okay. So asteroid mining, yeah, I would say that in terms of something profitable, in terms of something that isn't just a drain on our economy, something that we have to spend NASA money on, let's instead build an asteroid mining infrastructure with the intent of both exploiting asteroids and also protecting the Earth from them. Let's talk a little bit about methods of dealing with them. There's a million different suggestions. What are some ideas in that? Obviously, nuclear weapons, are one of the things that are talked about a lot in the movies. People love that, especially Armageddon, which is one of my all-time worst movies, in my opinion, that's ever been made. The most unscientific movie in human history. But nevertheless, it made a ton of money. But anyway, nuclear weapons are brought up, but those would be mostly a problem more than they would be a solution. A nuclear weapon used against an asteroid that was close to colliding with Earth would create a whole bunch of asteroids that would create all kinds of damage on this planet. May change it to where it's not an extinction level event. But then again, depending on the number of fragments, it could still create a nuclear winter or the equivalent of a nuclear winter. Nuclear weapons are probably a last resort, I would say. Send Tom Cruise up to an asteroid for Mission Impossible 9. What an idea there. Tom Cruise, especially. Well, he seems to be interested in these kinds of things. Oh, that's true. The core gives Armageddon a run for its money. Yes. Oh my God, what a ridiculously unrealistic movie that is. Oh my Lord. Question from Warhawk. Isn't it much better to change its delta V rather than blow it up? Absolutely. And there are many, many ways to do this. We can if we have enough warning ahead of time, if we have years of advance notice, we can put ion engines on them. We can put conventional thrusters on them. There are all kinds of ways to change the delta V of an asteroid to make it either miss us or just skip off of our atmosphere harmlessly. So yeah, there are much, much less destructive ways of dealing with asteroids that are a lot less risky. As long as we can see them ahead of time. And once again, we do not have a comprehensive system in place to protect us from these sorts of threats. Oumuamua is a perfect example. We had no idea that asteroid, if it was an asteroid, was there until it was past the orbit of Earth. So in any event, oh boy, I talked too much and falling behind. And that's another reason why I tend to have the chat disabled. I get more than enough questions here. Considering some asteroids in the long future that might become a threat are far too massive for moving effective thrusters, wouldn't it make sense to drill down and placing a nuke? Well, that's what they did both in Armageddon and in Deep Impact. Deep Impact was way, way more accurate of a film scientifically than Armageddon. But yeah, for huge asteroids, God forbid that we have something like that heading our way, we may have to use a nuclear weapon to knock it off course. And depending on how huge it is, it may be difficult for us to deflect it. And if it comes from an interstellar origin, we may be doomed. As a matter of fact, the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs, had it been a little bit bigger, it probably would have destroyed every life form on this planet or very close to it, down to bacteriological life form. Just to give an idea of what an extinction level event would do real briefly, it's not just the impact, it's not just the big tsunami tidal wave. The raining debris from an asteroid impact worldwide would increase the temperatures of the atmosphere to roughly 900 degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, this is an estimate, but still for a day or so, all the forests and just about every house, everything else on the surface of the planet would catch fire, and we would have a massive inferno that would consume the world. Only people in subsurface shelters might stand a chance of survival. And then the nuclear winter that would follow would annihilate the vast majority of people on this planet and the vast majority of species. And there's a very good chance that our species might not survive. Um, Send a red dwarf style mining ship and just take everything. I love red dwarf. Change the orbit of the moon change the orbit of it so it collides with the moon. Well, that's one way of getting rid of it, that's for sure. It depends, I guess, on what our presence on the moon is like. We'll have to be very careful about that, of course. Want to make sure that we don't crash it into a portion of the moon to where that's going to be problematic. But currently, that might be able to do. He actually couldn't deorbit a moon, according to another space nut. Well, interesting. A powered space net, seeker of knowledge, interesting. Or Skynet, something along those lines. Can you elaborate? Let's see. Kevlar netting with powered engines, says seeker of knowledge. Boy, that's an interesting idea. Grab the thing. Maybe for smaller asteroids, because we've already talked about grabbing asteroids with mining ships already. As a matter of fact, there are vessels on the drawing board right now that are capable of doing that, grabbing asteroids that are several hundred meters in diameter. Asteroids that would certainly create at least a nuclear level type explosion should they collide with Earth. So, yeah, I would say that's a hell of an idea. You grab it and then exploit it, mine it, make a ton of money off of it, and save the world. What a combination that would be. You'd be famous forever. Aside from just the profits of mining the asteroid, you could make billions just by just by interviews in the future that you saved the planet. Starship to send mining equipment and just disassemble it before it gets to Earth, depending on how far out it is, says Space Boy. Yes, that is true. The Starship makes asteroid mining a whole lot easier. It's because it can carry so much cargo. The possibility. Oh, thank you, another space nut. He just showed us a massive collision, an extinction level explosion. Boy, that gives me a nice warm fuzzy feeling seeing something like that. um, but yeah, the Starship has the ability to carry a lot of mining equipment, and certainly is an excellent solution to create a mining infrastructure. Send Chuck Norris with a potato gun. Chuck Norris can handle anything. The blast of a nuclear weapon to push the asteroid off course, similar to how the Orion drive uses the blast to push itself. Yes, of course, you start using nukes, and you better understand the makeup of that asteroid pretty completely. Otherwise, you're going to create a ton of fragments, which could create a lot of problems and a lot of complications. But yeah, that is possible. Okay, let's see here. Okay, railgun on the dark side of the moon, says Clotters. Thank you. That was another suggestion I was hoping somebody was going to bring up. A lunar mass driver could not only propel small asteroids for mining purposes and to make inhabiting the moon a profitable industry, but also to propel kinetic impactors that could knock an asteroid off its target. So you could make money off of the railgun, and you could use it to protect the Earth. As a matter of fact, this has been proposed a number of times as a defense against asteroids. Hit it with a smaller asteroid to knock it off course, says Tom, and that's another possibility, assuming that we have the ability to maneuver asteroids. So let's see here. Time to go to Mars, says Warhawk. Well, yes, I mean, this is the big thing that Elon Musk talks about, is our reason for having to be a multiplanetary species. If, God forbid, an extinction level event happens today or anytime in the near future and we can't stop it, it is going to bring a cataclysm that may exterminate our species, since we're not a multiplanetary civilization. So, in any event, and by the way, if you guys do want to participate in this chat that's going on right now, it's in the description. It's pretty easy to join, and you can do it for as little as $3 a month, which gives you access to 4 of these per month. So, not just for this one. So, it is a pretty inexpensive option if you want to participate. So, all right, there's my plug, and that's the only one that I'm going to give. Okay, what will NASA do against smaller asteroids at the moon? Yeah, Juhid, I would say that we're going to need a similar defense system there. One of the differences, I suppose, is that we don't have an ocean or anything along those lines. We don't have an atmosphere that's going to be superheated by falling debris. Rather, we're looking either at a direct collision or the collateral damage of a collision that's going to be a danger to the moon or to a base on the moon. But nevertheless, because the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, it also receives a great number of impacts. So yeah, I would say an asteroid defense system, if we establish a permanent presence, or when we establish a permanent presence on the moon, I think is going to make a very big difference. Okay, I'll buy you a Mars bar when we get there. I'm sorry, that was funny. I just had to make that remark. Okay, let's see here. All right. A link has just been put up on the Emergency Asteroid Defense Project. And once again, another Space Nut, thanks for everything you do for this channel. And he pins all of the links in Discord from these events. So that's another benefit. So in any event, thank you for doing that. But he pinned a link in terms of an organization that's dedicated towards protecting the planet. All right. Ice asteroids can just be melted or easily mined, says Julia. That's true. Once again, asteroid mining, it's a big one. Okay, the White House Office of Science and Technology released a report today, or rather June 20th, titled The National Near-Earth Object Preparedness Strategy and Action Plan. The 18-page document outlines the steps that NASA and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, will take over the next 10 years to both prevent dangerous asteroids from striking the Earth and prepare the country for the potential consequences of such an event. Let's hope it happens. 10 years is a long time, and a long time for these sorts of things to get defunded. So let's really, really hope that this continues, that this initiative continues. And once again, I do think that making this into a profitable industry and inviting the private sector into it, as we've done with Commercial Crew and others, is an excellent way for us to make sure that this project continues, that it doesn't just get defunded, that rather a corporation is looking at making a long-term profit out of this, and so they have no interest in having it defunded. All right, to Spaceboy, what if we detect the asteroid today? Could we do it with conventional launch vehicles if the Starship isn't ready? Depending on how many years ahead of time we're looking. If we're looking at an asteroid that's only a few months away, and it's very large, it would be a last second launch of nuclear weapons to try to deflect it sufficiently to skip off our atmosphere or some other last second desperation act. Now, if it's a couple of years, 3 years, 5 years, something like that, then that gives us a much bigger chance. But if we're only a few months away, our odds of deflecting a large asteroid, an extinction level event asteroid, is actually pretty low. So, it all depends. Is it true that asteroids in the belt are very far away from each other, says Warhawk? Yes, indeed they are. They're a massive distance away from each other. The whole concept that the asteroid belt is some, huge thing of rocks tumbling and hitting each other and that sort of thing. These rocks almost never hit each other. And no probe that we have ever sent through the asteroid belt has ever come close to colliding with an asteroid, even a small one. So yeah, there's a massive distance between asteroids in the belt. A giant space hammer. Well, Lucifer's hammer. That's kind of on the reverse side. That's a comet being the hammer hitting us. Okay. Let's see, send a small probe in order to push it out. If it's years away to Spaceboy, yes. There's a lot of things that we can do to slowly change the trajectory of an asteroid if we have years of advance notice. Once again, especially with interstellar objects that are coming in at massive rates of speed, we're not going to have that kind of notice. And that's troubling. That's very troubling. And who knows, the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs may have been an interstellar object for as far as we know. Use an array of lasers and point it at the asteroid to slowly alter its course, says Cyclonics. Yes, indeed. That is another option. The photons from a combined laser array would slowly push an asteroid out. As light as photons are, because they are traveling at light speed, they do have an amount of momentum, and so a large number of lasers blasting an asteroid would slowly change its trajectory and save us. So that's another thing. Another space nut just pointed out that it comes down to 75 cents per live event. I just said I wasn't going to plug it again, but I guess I did. 75 cents per live event, and you can participate in the chat. So in any event, now that's my last plug. Okay, sorry. Let's keep this going. Send a small probe with a light sail attached to it, point ground-based lasers at it in order to push it. Yeah, if we attached a light sail to the, that's an innovative solution to Spaceboy. Attaching light sails to the asteroid and using an array of lasers to push it. That's a very interesting idea. So in any event, yeah, that's intriguing. And also, something that could benefit us, right? Something that could help us out, because if we master the ability of using light sails and laser arrays, then that totally is a total game changer to our ability to explore interstellar space. So this could serve a lot of different surfaces. Set mined asteroids at the Lagrange points around Earth orbit and create a massive asteroid defense network. And then Colonel Lemon says, until a bald supervillain takes it over and creates a Death star, and then we have the premise of another superhero movie. So in any event, yeah, it's large projects, and I agree with you, DeSpace Boy. Large projects like this are unlikely to last. Then that's the nature, unfortunately, of the American governmental system. And the United States is the most likely to be funding something like this, is our change in government on a regular basis, and the fact that we have the Senate and the House and the Oval Office constantly working against each other, for us to maintain a consistent funding schedule to keep a project going for years and years. It's a real challenge to keep those sorts of things going. So in any event, adding to Juhid, adding to moon asteroid defense for smaller asteroids, we could simply use a railgun. Yeah, and once again, we brought that up. There's no atmosphere to slow the projectile down, and a good needed of sun, or rather, good amount of sun needed for electricity and Tesla batteries. Yes, I'm a big advocate of lunar space drivers and lunar railguns. In spite of the fact that those things can be weaponized, I am a big advocate of those, both in terms of defending the Earth and in terms of getting very valuable ores off of the moon and to Earth. It's a great solution, and it's been talked about since I was a kid. And once again, we haven't done a damn thing about it, even though I've known about this since I was like 12. And it really pisses me off that we haven't made any tangible progress towards creating something along these lines. And of course, I wouldn't be the angry astronaut if I didn't get pissed off about these things, but I just am. We've had all these decades to create something like this, and we just haven't done it. And instead, we spend $1 trillion invading certain countries and that sort of thing, and spend more money in the history of NASA on that one war than we spent spend more money on that one war than we spent in the entire history of NASA. Absurd. Absurd, especially given the limited benefits that the United States has received out of doing that. Now that we have a government friendly to Iran in power in that country. But anyway, enough politics. Enough politics. Okay. Okay, a railgun might create a nice rain of super fast rocks. Yeah, it could. That's true. But if it was launched from the moon, it might create a rain of super fast rocks that would go anywhere but Earth if it was done correctly. But once again, we would have to. Ooh, Seeker of Knowledge just went Star Trek on us. Antimatter, a matter antimatter explosion is the complete annihilation of the asteroid. Yes, that's true. The complete annihilation of an asteroid could be achieved by a matter-antimatter explosion. Unfortunately, we have yet to figure out how to manufacture large amounts of antimatter. We have we've spent decades building this sort of stuff, and we have a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of it, and it's cost us an insane amount of money to do it. So until we can come up with a more effective way of making antimatter, we using antimatter for just about anything is beyond us still. Not saying that we shouldn't be aggressively exploiting that, because antimatter would change everything when it comes to our power requirements. It would also give us the capability of completely destroying our own planet. Ain't that a lovely thought? But nevertheless, it's something that we should be investigating. To Space Boy, yes, we spent more on the F-35 than we spent on the entire total budget of NASA. You are correct. And what have we used the F-35 for so far? What high performance fighters have we had to defend this country against since we built this large Air Force of F-35s? So far, none. Unless there's going to be an Independence Day type invasion sometime in the near future, there is no no Air Force that comes anywhere near to approximating the power of the F-35s and the number of them that we have at our disposal. Joe Head points out for asteroid defense, we need more than one country, though. I agree this should be a multinational effort. I totally agree with that. We need international buy-in. It shouldn't just be NASA. I agree with that. Antimatter is made by a company in Pennsylvania, says Seeker of Knowledge. Do you happen to know how much of it that they've been able to manufacture so far? I'm just curious. And while I'm waiting for the answer to that question, Sir John Lemon, in pragmatic terms, to secure reliable funding, we need to find a way to convince the military industrial complex that space is where the big money is to be made. Not convinced it's a sensible idea in the long run, though. Yeah, convince the military industrial complex that we need to defend ourselves from asteroids instead of the communist Chinese or Vladimir Putin. I think that would be a tough sell. But who knows? Or from terrorists? I don't know. Maybe. But that would be a tough sell. I'd have a hard time with that one, that's for sure. We do know how to make a black hole. Sounds like a safe idea for defense against asteroids. And that's an interesting idea, Juhid. Use a black hole and suck the thing in. Very interesting concept. So, in any event, it depends, of course, on Colonel John Lemon pointed out asteroid can't destroy the Earth if there is no Earth. Well, we would need to have a very controlled black hole. Regarding micrometeorites, small colonies on Luna or Mars will need strong shielding or will need to live underground, says Cyclonics. That is one thing. Micrometeorites could also be contended with self-sealing domes. That would be another possibility. Put a dome over every habitation and have them self-sealing. We have self-sealing fuel tanks right now, and a micrometeorite could, with a foam or something along those lines, fill in whatever holes that they make. I don't necessarily think that we would need to live underground, but having shielding is definitely something that would be a good idea. There is an Air Force that can challenge. There is an Air Force that can challenge the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy. That's true. If they ever turn on one another, that's about it. China has copied the F-35, says Tom, but we wouldn't have built it. They wouldn't have been able to copy it. If we wouldn't have built it, they wouldn't have been able to copy it. That is true. And so far, the Chinese have yet to produce their copy of the F-35 in sufficient numbers to really challenge us. The most sufficient threat that they have against us is their massive quantity of intermediate range ballistic missiles, which they would use to sink our carrier task forces, and they could probably do it. They have so many of those missiles that they could probably pull that off. Not to say that they would win a war, but they would make it very costly for us. So in any event, not a power to be underestimated, but we are getting off topic. Providing an example for space with ridiculous spending of the military. I am not saying that we shouldn't have a strong defense. I'm an advocate of a strong defense, but a strong defense does not mean unnecessarily expensive weapon systems that we don't need. The most devastating attack against the United States in the last 2 decades was 9/11, and that was done with our own airplanes. The F-35 wouldn't have made any difference there unless we had been willing to shoot down our own jetliners, which at that time we weren't willing to do it. So in any event, I do believe in a strong defense. I just don't believe in unnecessary weapon systems that cost us so insane, such an insane amount of cash. It really is something else. Okay. Problem with antimatter is it needs to be created at the asteroid. It doesn't just hang about, says Juhid. If I suppose if it could be contained in an electromagnetic vacuum to keep it from a antimatter annihilation, that would be one way to transport it. I'm starting to sound a lot like Star Trek here, but if we're talking about antimatter, we may as well sound like Star Trek. So, in any event, that is another possibility. By the way, thank you very much to the viewers who are watching. We have 62 people online watching. Obviously, not all of you are Patreon members or anything. You're just part of the audience, and thank you so much for that. Thanks for participating. Okay, let's see here. The F-35 is like the Blue Origin lander of fighter jets. Well, it is expensive. There is no question about that. Elon has said the area of fighter jets are over. Unmanned drones are the future, says Seeker of Knowledge. I would say that there's a strong possibility of that. We are getting a bit off topic, though. Did we ever come up with how much antimatter that we've been able to build so far with that particular facility? Just curious about that. We have a lot of people typing here, by the way. Thank you so much for this participation on the part of our supporters. Just atoms, says Juhid from Fast Research. That's my understanding too, like trillionths of a gram, not very much, and it's taken us years to make it. 2 nanograms. So yeah, not very much of it at all. So yeah, that's a tiny amount, and it's taken us years to do it. So we need to figure out a more effective way of manufacturing antimatter. Or maybe we don't, because an ounce of antimatter would destroy this planet. So I would say that perhaps making antimatter in large quantities could be an extremely dangerous occupation. It would have to be done in a safe location, let me tell you. And it's kind of tough to determine what defines safe when you're dealing with antimatter, when a kilogram of it could destroy the inner solar system. So in any event, yeah, a nanogram is a billionth of a gram. So not a trillionth of a gram, a billionth of a gram. That's a difference of 1,000. So thank you for that that clarification to Space Boy. Okay. Mach 7 projectiles flying around. Okay, we got 2 people typing. We have more contributions coming in. Thank you very much. Keep these questions and comments coming, guys. Definitely. This is a discussion. How do we get the government or corporations to believe that defending us from the dangers of asteroids is something that we should be working on? The Hadron Collider and once again we're talking about antimatter there, and yeah, once again, antimatter would be quite a device to wipe out an asteroid. It would create a tremendous explosion. Research on the antimatter. So if there is an accident, you blow up the asteroid. Research on antimatter on the oncoming asteroid. That's an interesting idea. Why not? I suppose I'm not sure if you need a huge particle accelerator or particle collider in order to do that sort of research, but maybe. Hard to say. Okay, we got 2 more people typing in. Thank you very much for your contributions here. 3 people typing. And I'm keeping my voice. Have we ever had an asteroid defense capability in our history of space flight? No, not to my knowledge. We've had no effective defense aside from just desperately, chucking nukes at it at the last second with ICBMs. I don't think we've ever had anything to where we would have had to get something put together to deflect the asteroid at the last moment. We have the ability to detect asteroids to a limited degree. We do not have the ability to deflect them. Okay, can plasma be used for destroying asteroids? Good question. I don't know, Jude. That's an interesting question. I suppose something I should be looking up. Melting an iron asteroid still makes an asteroid. Yeah, that's true. Giant rotating Tesla coils in deep space. Wow, that would be quite a project. Secret knowledge. Use a dedicated customer $670 million accelerator to produce 10 grams of antimatter per year. Form the antiprotons into antihydrogen and coat it with anti-lithium to stabilize it and make storage last for decades. Seeker of knowledge, clearly you've put a lot of research into antimatter. Very interesting indeed. A $670 million accelerator, that's all you would need, and you could produce 10 grams of antimatter per year. I'd be interested in seeing links on that because that's fascinating. 10 grams of antimatter could do some amazing things. Yeah, you're right, Warhawk. Smart cookies in here. We have some people who have a lot of knowledge. Sir John Lemon, I suppose a large enough collider built through an asteroid could avoid the problem of storing antimatter by essentially being a one-use antimatter bomb to blow the thing apart from the inside. By the way, it could also be a very profitable thing because if we learn how to manufacture antimatter in any kind of quantity, that takes care of Earth's power needs forever, or at least for the foreseeable future. It would do far more than fusion. E equals mc squared, obviously, is a very, very big number. Matter times the speed of light squared. It's a huge number when you talk about the amount of energy created by a matter-antimatter explosion. And that's why they use it to power the Enterprise and generate warp drive. Okay, depending on the type of asteroid, we could use magnetism. Yeah, well, iron asteroids being not the most common, but a fairly common asteroid. It would have to be a hell of a magnet depending on the type. But yeah, and of course, given a large amount of time dedicated to the project, that could definitely be done. The issue is not the building cost, but the running cost. The CERN Super Collider, as an example, that's true. That's a very expensive piece of equipment to use. If we could make antimatter. Oh, thank you for the link, Seeker of Knowledge. I appreciate that. I am intrigued to read this because then I'm going to do a video on antimatter propulsion, which would change everything in terms of interplanetary exploration. Of course, it could also, as I say, destroy the planet. So we have to be very careful as to who gets a hold of all this. But nevertheless, thank you for that link. I'm going to research that in terms of antimatter production. A large electromagnet, says Tom. Yeah, well, if deployed ahead of time, and if it had a nuclear reactor of some kind, or a hell of a lot of solar panels, it could pull an iron asteroid off target. But the most common types of asteroids are mostly water and carbon, and would not be as heavily affected by magnetism. So that is a drawback. Can't most common asteroids be spun apart by increasing its rate or rotation, says Cully. The C class especially, yes. The ones that are carbon and water and aren't very well held together, yes. The ones that are mostly metallic are much more difficult to destroy. But yeah, if you were able to slowly accelerate the rotation of an asteroid and destroy it, that would be something else. Okay. How is the Starship going to deal with mini asteroids? It's a big rocket and quite the target, says Juhid. Yeah, I would say that micrometeoroids could present quite a problem. Stainless steel is not going to stop a micrometeoroid traveling at thousands and thousands of miles an hour. But at the same time, the ISS travels at an immense speed as it orbits the planet. It does encounter micrometeoroids on a regular basis and needs to effect repairs against such things. And sometimes they hear an unpleasant clang against the side of the structure. which unnerves, I think, the asteroids on board, or rather the astronauts on board when it happens. Scares the hell out of them, to be honest. So in any, because a lot of times these things come without warning if they're small. And space junk makes the problem even worse. So yeah, and actually, space junk could be a problem with the starship as well. Okay. Pieces of it. If we destroy an asteroid, yes, but small. Cully points out that smaller pieces won't make it through an atmosphere. It depends on how small they are, but yeah, if we can disintegrate them, yeah, I mean, it would take, a lot of physics involved in that calculation to and an understanding of the composition of the atmosphere. Again, advance notice. You really need it. Yeah, really need it. We just got a link popped here and I may have lost. Hold on, let me make sure. Okay. Question: what sort of damage would a large asteroid do if it passed the Earth as low as 50 kilometers above sea level, but fast enough so it didn't deorbit and simply flew out the other side to carry on its merry way? Virtually nothing. As long as a piece of it didn't fall off in the process and collide with the planet. If it simply passed through the upper atmosphere, as a matter of fact, that has happened. It's been photographed. Look it up on YouTube and you'll see a huge fireball in the sky in the middle of the day, something that would have created quite an amount of damage if it had collided, skimmed through the upper level of our atmosphere and barely missed. The damage would be minor, if any damage at all, unless it exploded in the process. But that would be unlikely if it was that high up, but still, yeah, if it air bursted, then still it could be significant. By the way, we tend to get hit by these things pretty often. Every year, we have the equivalent of a thermonuclear explosion in the upper atmosphere from an asteroid collision that doesn't reach the surface. And we just don't notice it. It's that bad. So we get hit by things that create pretty substantial explosions on a pretty regular basis. It's just they don't get close enough to the surface to be any kind of real problem. But yeah, they're more of a threat than a lot of people might be willing to admit. Um, okay. The ISS is double layered, says Juhid. Yes, it is. And thank God it is, because that would be a serious problem for them. And there have been a couple of occasions where they've had to get into the Soyuz when they've detected a large hunk of space junk, though, not asteroids, but space junk heading their way. And there's been some question as to whether or not that their thrusters would allow them to avoid the collision. And they've gotten into the Soyuz for an emergency evacuation. That's how serious this problem has been from time to time. Okay. Oh, and yeah, 7 holes in the space station. Smarter every day. And yeah, well, we just put up a question, or rather a link that we have holes in the space station. And yes, indeed we do. Things that we have to repair on a regular basis. A lot of it is caused by space junk, not by micrometeoroids. But still, yeah, it's a problem that the astronauts on the space station have to deal with on a regular basis. And it's a pity, because they should be busy doing science, not fixing holes in the stinking station. But that's our own fault for the most part with all the space junk. Break it apart using rotation, says Spaceboy, and use lasers to destroy the largest fragments. That's an interesting solution. Massive concussion wave, depending on size. Yes, that's true. If it were colossal, then yeah, that could be a real problem. And if it were, especially if it were to airburst. And Spaceboy just posted a picture of a 66-meter asteroid passing through the atmosphere. Uranium-rich asteroid air bursting sounds very, very scary. Yeah, Jude, you're right. If something were rich in uranium and it air bursted, yeah, that would be very problematic. How often do radioactive elements occur in asteroids? It depends on what kind of asteroid we're talking about. If it's an asteroid that has a lot of heavy metals in it, then uranium is probably present. How often? It isn't the most common type of asteroid, but yes, they do exist. Um, so, in any event, and then we just put a link up with space junk, which needs to be discussed at some point again. I've talked about it once before, but it's going to be made very much worse, by the way, if we keep launching anti-sat missiles. How could a station like the ISS actively protect itself from oncoming debris besides maneuvering out of the way? Not sure, Cully. I'm really not sure. I don't think they've figured it out, even if you knew something was coming. Thus far, evading it is their current strategy. Trying to destroy it or anything else, and they don't have enough warning to try to deflect it somehow. The ISS doesn't move out of the way. Can you please clarify that? My understanding is that they use their thrusters to change their orbit slightly in order to make a change to adjust for the course of the approaching debris. It's hit by hundreds of micrometeorites every day. That's true. How about the big stuff? Secret of knowledge. One of the jobs Starship has, according to Elon, is to clean up space junk. Yep, I would say that's a very good task for it, since it can carry such a massive amount of cargo. I think that it, put up a net of some kind and haul the stuff into the cargo bay. I think that that would be something else. Cully says for things you know are coming, they move for sure. They use birthed craft to realign orbit. Now, would that include the Soyuz? Does the Soyuz realign their orbit? Yes. They have a Soyuz permanently docked, and I don't believe that it doesn't have any fuel. And Progress cargo ships also adjust their location. Are the tanks dry on the Soyuz? The one that they have docked for emergencies? The Starliner has the capability, but the Crew Dragon does not. Yeah, I'll be talking about that in my video, by the way, in terms of a reason, an alternative to the Starliner that could also provide us with maneuverability for the ISS. Yeah, that's a reason for the Starliner, but of course the Soyuz can do it as well. The Soyuz procedures for escape is the Russians always have a man aboard. But I'm pretty sure they don't have dry tanks. I think they could probably provide some emergency maneuverability should something come up. I don't know, that's an assumption, but I do believe that they at least have something in their tanks in order to, at the very least, to detach. But I don't know. Or to maneuver for re-entry. Does the next Axiom space station intend to have its own station keeping propulsion? Um, that I'm not sure. I'm going to research that, Cully, because I am very interested in the Axiom space station. I think there's a lot of details they haven't released yet about it. Okay, another space note. Do you see the Russian astronaut that was a robot? He was almost left behind due to docking procedures. Okay, does the next Axiom space station, anybody knows? Yes. Okay, it does. It does have its own station-keeping propulsion, the Axiom space station. And for those of you that don't know what the Axiom station is, it's going to be the first private space station. And the idea is to add modules onto the ISS until they have enough for a self-contained space station, and then to detach that station from the ISS and spin it off so that they're able to to have a self-sustaining space station. They're going to be adding solar panels and that sort of thing. And SpaceX will be sending up the first group of space tourists from Axiom next year to begin the investigation into doing this. The exact details are somewhat secretive, but nevertheless, Axiom's intention is the first commercial, privately owned space station, and I am super excited about this. Clatters asks, how is the ISS going to be retired? It is my hope that the ISS is not going to be retired for quite some time. I think that it's going to become too much of an interest to commercial space entities, at least until it's just no longer viable at all. But yeah, burning it up on reentry, perhaps detaching modules in the process so the burnup isn't that extensive. Deorbited in 2024 is the idea. I doubt it. It's just my personal opinion, but I don't think they're going to deorbit it in 2024. Excuse me. I think that the ISS still has too many functions to perform before we bring it down in less than 4 years. So we shall see. We shall see. Yeah, detaching a commercial part of the station, detaching the rest to burn it up. I think it's a good asset, says DeSpaceBoy, and its lifetime should be extended beyond that. I agree with you, DeSpaceBoy. Until we have something of a similar size and similar capabilities in orbit, deorbiting it at this point, I think, is not in our interest. The amount of money that it requires to keep it in orbit is minuscule compared to the amount of money that we spend on so many other things. I think it's a good idea to keep it going. And there's a lot of commercial interest in it as well. Until it's falling apart, I don't think that we need to deorbit it. Okay, 2028 says another space nut is end of life for ISS at that point. Either NASA will make it a commercial entity or we will get a fireworks show. It is my hope that we get the former. I'm really hoping that we make it a commercial entity. So we shall see. If they get rid of the old station, then they can build a new one. Yup, but that's an expensive undertaking. I'd like us to be building one before we get rid of the old one. I heard the end of this decade is when it will be detached from Axiom. I don't think there will be a benefit to deorbiting it altogether, says Sir John Lemon. We have a lot of opinions on this one. I think it should be moved out to Earth, Moon, Lagrange point. Very interesting idea. That's from Seeker of Knowledge. Juhid, it's an incredibly important part of history of countries coming together in space exploration, says Juhid. I agree. I say don't destroy it. I say let's push it up into a higher orbit where it's going to stay put and keep it, if for no other reason, a space museum or something along those lines. Destroying it would be a shame. I would hate that. Until it gets to the point of the Mir station, we should keep it operating for a while, says DeSpaceBoy. I agree. Okay. Abandoned as an artifact, as I just said, Sir John Lemon. Yes, I agree. Tom, we won't need a space station if we have a moon base. Well, I think we'll need something in ISS because a moon base is 1/6 gravity, whereas the ISS is 0 gravity. So I think that there's going to be certain advantages to maintaining a presence in low Earth orbit. That's just my opinion.
And ZZ Top says it's not as historical as people think. Well, Skylab isn't the ISS, in my opinion. Skylab was just a chunk of a Saturn V, and it was one country, whereas this is a symbol of international cooperation that we never had until this point. Before that, it was a bunch of individual nations all competing with each other, and especially the USSR. And now we have the ISS as a symbol of international cooperation, no matter how bad things have gotten between us and the Russians. And I think that we need to keep that in place. Okay, turn it into a museum. But it's not, and Sir John Lim, it's not as if the ISS is taking up a lot of real estate. We're getting off topic, by the way. We should have had a should we keep the ISS as a topic, perhaps. So maybe talking a little bit more about asteroid deflection, if we have that possibility. Um, okay. Make it a truck stop on the way to the moon, says Seeker of Knowledge. That's not a bad idea, but we'll have a station orbiting the moon for the moon base, says Tom. And yes, that's true. And I'm a big advocate of the lunar gateway. As a matter of fact, I think the lunar gateway should be the moon's ISS. I think that there's going to be so many experiments that we can perform on the lunar gateway that we cannot perform on the ISS, namely because the lunar gateway is not going to be protected by our magnetosphere. And as a result, there's a lot of experiments that we can do on the lunar gateway that approximate interplanetary travel, whereas the ISS has things that don't approximate interplanetary travel. And so we need to keep that in mind. Okay, let's keep her going here. Boy, we're talking a lot about the ISS, and don't apologize, Juhid. I love the ISS too. I really love the ISS. I think it's the best thing that NASA's done since Apollo. And it's not just NASA; it's all of us. It's a human thing, not a NASA thing, not a Roscosmos thing, and that makes it pretty damn unique. And we should keep it for as long as we possibly can. Okay, what's our best choices for early detection of asteroids? Right now, we have a lot of independent astronomers who are looking for dangers to our planet, and yeah, that's something that we don't have a complete enough system in place for detection of asteroids. How feasible is it to adjust an asteroid's detection, says Sir John Lemon, to bring it into usable orbit with our current technology? Delta 5 or Delta V is the main thing, of course, but how are we able to provide that at the moment? There's a lot of ways. We have ion engines right now. Ion engines might be a way of handling it, assuming, of course, that we perform the maneuver years ahead of time and we have enough fuel available to us. If not that, nuclear weapons are one of our few other alternatives with our current technology. We don't have, or at least when, of course, we have other technology that certainly is capable of making other alternatives. But in terms of what we have right now, we have ion engines, we have nuclear weapons. What else do we have that we currently have in production? Not something that could be made in the future, but rather something that we currently have. An orbital assembly of a conventional rocket. Yes, that would be another possibility. Take that rocket to the asteroid, set it down, and use it to push the asteroid out. Of course, all of these things include the danger of landing on an asteroid at all. Landing on an asteroid is dangerous in itself. As the Japanese have discovered in their efforts to do so. The ridiculously low amount of gravity, the small amount of control that you have, that sort of thing. I would say trying to deflect an asteroid that's on its way to get us is something that should be a manned expedition. A robot expedition is subject to a lot of problems. I would say manned control is something, in other words, the ability, in case the first plan doesn't work, for humans to go for a second plan. That's something that we're more capable of doing without, that robots are not capable of doing. Okay, let's see here. Orbit assemble of a conventional. Okay, we already covered that. A deep space detection network that looks in 360 degrees. Could be worth building that on the moon. Yes, I agree. A lunar construction of anything, radio astronomy, it doesn't matter what it is. We're going to have a lot less interference and a lot fewer things obstructing our view if we put it in place on the moon. And yes, Cully, we've already talked about, would the nuke not just make a debris cloud flying at Earth? Well, it depends on how far ahead of time we're dealing with the problem. If we hit the asteroid at a certain point and detonate it with the idea of knocking the cloud off target, but nevertheless, it could still definitely do that. Nukes are definitely not the best solution at all. We need to come up with a better way of dealing with this. Slow gravity tractor. Our ability to make use of gravity is limited right now. Our understanding of gravity is limited. There are lots of things that we don't get about gravity. Even Einstein was confused by gravity. So in any event, yes, says Cully, says, damn it all. It comes down to how much time you're allotted. Yes, I agree with you, Cully. If you don't have a lot of time, then your options are super limited, which means early detection is the key. And we don't have it. We have a bunch of independent astronomers who are trying to track these things down, and they're not always spotting them. I already mentioned Oumuamua. We had no idea it was there until it had already passed our orbit, and that is not a good sign. Because that was a pretty big asteroid, if it was an asteroid, and we didn't pick it up until it was way past us. So that is a serious issue. So yeah, last effort basically went at close range. Yeah, and last efforts, aside from nukes, I don't see a whole lot of other alternatives or kinetic penetrators, but they would have to be really powerful ones launched by an electromagnetic system that we don't currently have in place. Some sort of orbital electromagnetic system pointed away from Earth rather than towards Earth. But we don't have one of those, at least not to my knowledge, unless somebody's been breaking treaties. Okay, so we currently have about 20 minutes left, just so you know. Okay. It could be used at close, which would save Earth, but lose a lot of people in countries quite likely, basically when at close range. Yes, that's true. A cloud of approaching meteors might not be an extinction level event. But then again, it could still be very destructive. A whole bunch of them impacting could create something similar to a nuclear winter, which would still be devastating. Maybe not an extinction level event, but a really, really devastating effect for the planet. Okay. Again, a gravity tractor, one of those solutions that pertains to early detection. Against early detection, early detection. We keep talking about that, and we don't have it. Not comprehensive early detection. We don't have it at all, and something that we should definitely be investing in, but we aren't. And one of the biggest things is because it just hasn't happened. We haven't had a serious event. The Tunguska event, what we had in the upper atmosphere when the Russians, the Russians experienced that, although nobody was killed, a lot of injuries, but I don't believe anybody was killed in that event. In Tunguska, I don't think there are any deaths in that either, or maybe one or two. So as a result, because we haven't had anything really disastrous happen, we're so short. We just have blinders on as a species, and we just don't pay attention, and that's really unfortunate. We should be advanced enough to see life-threatening asteroids as long as we push the infrastructure to do so. Yes, I agree with you, Jewhead. We have the technology. We should be able to put this in place. We just don't. We don't invest the money. And the amount of money that we would need to invest to put in a comprehensive asteroid detection system would be minuscule, minuscule. But we just don't do it because we're more concerned about other threats to the human species, or we're just more concerned about spending money on a new bridge or something like that. Okay. Gravity wave generator to destroy the asteroid patented by DARPA since no one mentioned it, says Seeker of Knowledge. Do you have a link, Seeker of Knowledge, that you could possibly post? I would really appreciate that. That would be a great thing for you to put on Discord. Okay, running out of time, 15 minutes. Come up with solutions for affordable early detection. A little on the side, but Martian dust storms are caused by asteroid impacts. Possibly some of it, but there's a lot we don't know about the Martian regolith. A moon base would be a great spot for early detection systems, says Tom. Yes, I agree. And thank you for that link to Spaceboy on high frequency gravitational wave generators. Very interesting. Thank you for putting up that link. So yeah, Moonbase would be a great spot for early detection system. Not only early detections, but also a mass driver, as I mentioned before, to destroy these things, and also as a very profitable way of mining the moon. I mean, it's a win-win in so many different ways. Why aren't we doing this? It's frustrating as hell. Really annoys me. But in any event, that's just how it is with me. So, okay. Excuse me, but yes, it has been patented. Very interesting. I'm gonna have a look at that. Use the mass driver to launch space telescopes in order for a network of early detection. That's another idea. And this is cool. Let's put ideas out there for early detection, because as much as I appreciate the efforts being made by amateur astronomers right now to pick these things up, to find these approaching threats to our survival, it's not enough. This is a threat to human existence that should be taken seriously by the governments of the planet. Use a mass driver with a tungsten ball or an object to knock it out, says Tom. Yes, kinetic penetrators or a tungsten ball, something along those lines. Yeah, it's something that I talked about, and yeah, perfect use for a mass driver, and something we could use in the meantime while we're using it to mine the moon. Why not? Nanobots as a cloud of detectors, says Seeker of Knowledge. That's a hell of an idea. Very interesting. Send those things out. Um, a 2 kilometer wide tungsten ball. Doesn't have to be that big, again, depending on early detection. Um, But yeah, that's another thing. Early detection idea. Turn Voyager probes into sleep mode and use a low frequency radar to detect for large mass objects not known. Very interesting idea. Another space not very interesting suggestion. Why not? And sending out low frequency radar. We've done that already to scan the asteroid belt. Once we sent out a radar, a very high-powered radar scan to determine locations of asteroids in the asteroid belt, which, by the way, will one day be picked up by an extraterrestrial civilization. They'll wonder what the hell it is. They will theorize that it's from another advanced civilization, but since it doesn't repeat, if they have the same beliefs that we do, they're not going to accept that as evidence of an advanced civilization. If they're not as narrow minded as we are, they're going to accept that as evidence of an advanced civilization. How about that? A way to go off topic there for a moment, but I like talking about extraterrestrial life, so I had to mention it real quick. Lead might not shatter it or lower the chances. Are we still able to communicate with Voyager? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Amazing. After all these decades, yes, indeed, we can still communicate with Voyager, and we are going to be able to. Both Voyager probes are past the great filter, says another space nut. And by the great filter, we mean, an event that will destroy our species, nuclear war, asteroid collision, whatever. They will be drifting through the galaxy for many, many millions of years to come with their gold placards on board. And somebody may eventually come across them and find out who we are or who we used to be. So in any event, but yes, they're at very low power and had to shut down most systems, point out to Spaceboy, true. But we're still in contact of these things that were launched way back in the 1970s, a testament to human engineering. Amazing, amazing pieces of equipment. Okay, and we just sent our solar system is blanketed in a giant wall of fire. Might make it difficult to travel to interstellar space. Very interesting. I don't know a thing about that. I am intrigued. So I'm going to have to follow that link as well. I'm very interested. Is that something like the space barrier at the edge of the galaxy that they talk about in Star Trek? I'm very interested to see what that means. A thermal barrier, the wall keeping humans inside. Who knows? Was that created artificially by a species keeping us restricted to our own solar system? A heliopause at the edge of the solar system. Very interesting indeed. We shall see what that means to our exploration of the of interstellar space. Both Voyager probes made it past, points out another space nut. Well, how about that? Good for them. Good for them. Okay, so in any event, apparently the heliopause or the wall of fire is not significant enough to stop things as old as the Voyager probes. So not too significant of a barrier apparently, or perhaps they pass through at a different point to where it's not such a significant issue. Okay, we have another person typing in, and we've got about 10 minutes left, or about 8 minutes left, or maybe it was just pure luck. Well, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 made it through, and they were on different trajectories, and they both made it, but who knows? Maybe it was luck. Okay, and yes, I always reserve 90 minutes for these discussions, just for everybody's information. It's quite a stretch, but nevertheless, we always have a lot of people contributing. Lots of people are typing. Lots of people typing. Obviously, we have picked up a big time topic. Maybe it's similar to the Van Allen belts, stronger and weaker in certain areas, says to Spaceboy. There's a lot of things to be determined beyond the orbit of Pluto and things that we have not really sent much out. Maybe New Horizons will find out more about it once it gets there. And it's going at a tremendous rate of speed, so who knows what it's going to find. Maybe you need to exit via the trailing end rather than the leading end to avoid the wall of fire, says Clatters. That's an interesting point because, well, of course, we had the advantage of seeing the diagram, but it did show a trailing end without much evidence of that wall of fire. So perhaps Voyager and Voyagers 1 and 2 went out that way. Hard to say. How long until New Horizons gets there, says Spaceboy. Don't know. It's going at a tremendous rate of speed compared to Voyagers 1 and 2. So hard to say. It didn't have the advantage of using the slingshots of Jupiter and Saturn, but nevertheless, it's going really quick. Maybe the universe set it up to see if we're smart enough to get out, says Seeker of Knowledge. Well, isn't that a thought? Maybe it's a way of filtering out those who are not intelligent enough and perhaps not worthy to be exploring systems beyond the solar system. Okay. Need to change the stream topic to always mean main topic, says Juhid. You're right. We always go off course, don't we? Guess it's how it works. But yeah, I'll do that. Main topic. Main, because you're right. We always go off on tangents. But it's fun, isn't it? Okay, so as we continue on, we have 6 minutes left, so keep contributing. And at this point, the floor is open for the last 5 or 6 minutes. Let's thank you to Spaceboy. Yes, these streams are very enjoyable, and I hope that we get more people participating. I certainly hope so. You've got several people typing in. Tom agrees. Yes, he enjoys these streaming events. Well, thank you, Tom. I have a great time with them as well. They're amazing, and I love it. More people who are participate, the better. So anyway, we got several people typing, and the time just flies by, says Seeker of Knowledge. Yes, indeed. I agree with you. 90 minutes, the length of a feature film, and boy, it just blows by. If we haven't passed the last great filter, what is the last one we need to pass, says Cully. I would say artificial intelligence, hyper intelligent AI. I would say that's the last filter. Can we create a hyper intelligent AI that does not take us out? I would say that that's a big filter. What were the filters before? Well, actually, we still have one, thermonuclear war. That is a filter that still exists. Multicellular life is another one. Yeah, that is a filter, isn't it? We went from being single-celled organisms to multicellular. Breton's late to the discussion. I'm so sorry. We only have a few minutes. I'll hold on for a couple of more minutes for your benefit, Breton's. This was mentioned already how likely we are to keep Mars free of space debris. If we set up a good defense system, we can keep it clear of space debris. But yeah, that is a clear danger to Mars colonization. Mars gets hit 200 times a year by volleyball size or larger asteroids. And this has been confirmed by our orbiter. So we need to keep that planet clear if we want to colonize it for the long term. The odds of a colony being hit by an asteroid increase year by year. Do most asteroids come from the Kuiper belt rather than being interstellar? Yes, very few of them are interstellar. As a matter of fact, we've only detected two, to my knowledge, Oumuamua and one other. So in any event, question from Juhid. With the first landing on Mars by humans, was there any idea for asteroid defense? Considering the rocket already going there at high risk, Starship for now doesn't seem to have any defensive plans. As far as I know, there's no idea, no plan for asteroid defense, and something we should be working on. But then again, we're not working on defending our own civilization from it, are we? But it'd be a lot simpler to defend one colony that's limited to a relatively small area from asteroids. So in any event, yeah, I would say that would make a difference. So I made a commitment to hang on for a few more minutes. So we have another 10, let's say. I'm going to give us another 10 minutes for the benefit of the individual who joined us late. So in any event, let's keep these comments and questions coming. And I have opened the floor. So let's keep it going. Space Trashmen, special version of Starship. You know something? There is a science fiction series made about space trash guys. I don't know if it went on for more than a few episodes, but yeah, they went and grabbed space trash. What a boring job that would be for the Starship. But yes, okay, let's say we go back in time. Would have been possible if none of the space shuttles were destroyed to build a subsequent asteroid defense. If we went back in time, we could have built an asteroid defense a long time ago. If we had gone back in time, there's a lot of things we could have accomplished. But yeah, we could have built an asteroid defense. Sure. Without the space shuttle, we could have done it. But unfortunately, we didn't. So, and we still haven't. It's how short sighted our species is. Any personal idea as to what would be the best way when traveling? Well, that's a very good question. Because all we can do is, for one thing we do know is that micrometeoroids between planets are really uncommon thus far. Not one probe has collided with one. So it's pretty unlikely that we're going to have a collision, but nevertheless, something we should look into. And as far as we know, we haven't done anything to protect against that. But using radar to scan ahead and just zap the things as they come in, or hit them with kinetic penetrators, there's a variety of different ways to deal with it. Okay. Gravity propulsion, antimatter propulsion. Does this make warp drive probable? Probable? No. We still need things like dark energy and a variety of other things. Negative energy has been talked about for warp drive. We need an enormous amount of power, so that makes a big difference. But there's a number of things that are required, at least from our current understanding of warp drive. Antimatter drive makes interplanetary discovery tremendous. It creates a huge opportunity. But nevertheless, antimatter, it makes it more likely, but not probable, I would say. Okay, let's see here. How much of a risk are asteroids when we come to colonizing the moons of the gas giants? I would say somewhat of a risk, but at the same time, the gas giants tend to pull these asteroids into themselves, as we saw with Jupiter not too long ago. But still, it's obvious with Callisto, especially, that it gets hit all the time by meteors. So I would say, yeah, it's kind of like the moon as something along those lines. That's probably the most likely. Britons, I have a hypothesis that the UFOs are time travelers. That would explain the constant denial from governments and their ability to warp time and space. Oh boy, I'm avoiding UFOs. But I opened the floor, so I'll address them. I personally believe that the Tic Tac things that we discovered are some sort of stealth aircraft that we have determined using a type of material that changes our way of observing them, both visually and with radar, that allows them to appear to do things that are impossible. There are types of materials that apparently allow for these sorts of things. I find that to be more likely than the Tic Tacs being extraterrestrial in origin, but I could be wrong about that. But thus far, our evidence of UFOs is fairly limited. I'm not a big thing on government cover-ups just because it would involve a whole lot of governments getting together on this. But nevertheless, it's a long conversation for later. I tend to avoid UFOs because it tends to turn off a lot of folks who watch the more traditional science topics. But at the same time, am I saying UFOs are impossible or don't exist? No. No, I would say that there is a possibility that we are being observed and that these sightings are the real thing. But at the same time, do I think it's likely? No, I don't. I don't actually. If UFOs have the ability of warp time and space, do you think our governments would believe that's possible? Says Cully. Yeah, I would say that they would find it to be pretty unlikely. I would say that again, I'm keep going back to the Tic Tacs because that's probably the best evidence we have so far. And I think that that's some sort of stealth thing. Meta materials. Thank you, seeker of knowledge. Meta materials can be used for a couple of points. One way would be to use meta materials to reduce the energy requirements of a warp drive. And so that's the idea or the theory that's put behind what the Tic Tacs are doing is using meta materials to travel at warp speed, which is why they're able to do what they seem to be able to do. However, my opinion is that meta materials are being used to create stealth images or false images, and that they are something that are an experiment of our own species. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I find it to be more likely than using it for warp drive. But once again, I could be wrong. It's just a personal opinion. Okay, yes, getting governments together is pretty hard to do, says Space Boy. I agree. I think any sort of conspiracy to cover up UFOs would be really tough to get the Russians to do, for example. I think the Russians would put that information out there in a second and they wouldn't care about what chaos it would cause. That's just my opinion. Okay, for purposes of navigating the galaxy, is our best option to invest in a particular powerful propulsion methods or to look ways to bend space-time to navigate something akin to wormholes? I would say that our best investment is in nuclear thermal and other propulsions like it, just because they're more feasible. Whereas we're not positive as to whether or not we can use wormholes or bending space time to our advantage. Now, if we made a breakthrough in that, it would change everything. We could go to other star systems. We could do whatever the hell we wanted to. And there's a theory out there, actually, that gamma ray bursts are created when extraterrestrials spool up their warp drives. And by the way, I'll talk about that some other time. But in any event, I would say the best investment would be in some sort of nuclear propulsion or something along those lines to give us better interstellar capabilities. Okay, Juhid just said he doesn't personally believe in UFOs. Worth a conversation worth having, but later on, and I do tend to agree. I did open up the floor. Maybe I should have said something about the UFOs. But in any event, I made my opinion clear. Like Elon, I tend to think that they may be there, but I don't think they're making their presence clear to us. I think that if they are present watching us, they're also smart enough to avoid our ability to detect them. Okay. Anti-gravity. If I remember correctly, there's a beetle that uses it to fly. Yeah, look that up. I'd be interested to see if there's a way for us to create anti-grav or artificial gravity that doesn't involve spinning things and using centripetal force in order to accomplish that. Okay, we still have people typing and we still have people watching. 71, actually 74 people watching. Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys participating. Which concept for long-term orbital habitation appeals to you the most in terms of quality of life? I don't like orbital habitation, period. However, for long-term orbital habitation and orbiting one that a rotating orbital habitation that gives me some kind of artificial gravity. However, at the same time, if that gives me nausea full time because centripetal force doesn't work the way we think it does, or the way we've theorized that it does, then no, I don't like that idea. I would prefer to live on a planet than off one, simply because I would prefer to see the Olympus Mons in person. I would prefer to see the Valles Marineris in person. I'd rather to see the wonders of Mars with my own two eyes than I would to live in orbit. However, living in orbit would be a pretty cool thing too, to be honest. I'd give quite a lot to be on the ISS for one day. So it might be pretty cool, to be honest. Thoughts on Daedalus deuterium engines for interstellar travel? Well, we need to crack fusion in order to be able to do that. And we keep talking about fusion as if it's 3 decades around the corner or whatever. Hopefully, we get fusion figured out. If we do, it changes everything, not just interstellar travel, but interplanetary travel. So, in any event, yeah, maybe we can finally master this and master Daedalus. But currently, we don't have the technology to do it, not just yet. The circumference of centrifugal force needs to be of a big size to be comfortable, says Juhid. Yes, it does. And how much money is that going to cost? And are we able or willing to do it? And are only the extremely rich going to be able to afford it? Hard to say. We are almost out of time. One more question, and here comes 2 people who are typing. And I'm going to answer as many as I can. Do I agree with Elon's philosophy that we have an obligation to spread life throughout the cosmos? Yes, I do. Yes, I absolutely do. Seeker of Knowledge says that we need to have a 1 kilometer size orbiting station to create artificial gravity. And there's only a narrow corridor that would be livable, says Cully. Yes, centripetal force has its issues. It's not as simple as just making a spinning habitat. You might be able to do it for exercise so that your muscles don't fall apart, but in terms of permanent artificial gravity, that's about the extent of it. Cully is typing. Last comment. Last comment. Sorry, Seeker of Knowledge. I have already gone over the time that I said I would. Well, Cully just backed out. 2 people just backed out. Now somebody else is saying, okay, one more comment. Let's get it in, guys. Have a good day, says DeSpace Boy. Well, thank you very much for that. And at that point, I need to close. I'm at an hour and 40 minutes. This was delightful. I look forward to seeing you guys again next Sunday. If you want to participate, all you have to do is to become a Patreon member for $3 a month, 75 cents a day. Oh, doggone it, I made another plug. But in any event, if you don't want to participate, I would love to see you. But thanks for being part of the audience too. So in any event, until next time, folks, and you are welcome, everybody saying thank you. So until next time, stay angry about space.